Hello, Mr. Mailer here, your online math teacher, and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be continuing my video series on TI tips, and in particular, we're going to be looking at how we can find the mean and standard deviation of the probability distribution for a discrete random variable on a TI-84. So if you find this video helpful, consider hitting the like button and subscribing, and let's go. So I've defined a discrete random variable here. So I've let age be x be equal to the age of students in a stats class. And the values I have x taking on are 16, 17, 18, and 19, with a 2% chance that a student in this class is 16 years old, a 48% chance they're 17, a 35% chance they're 18, and a 15% chance they are 19. So this is 100% of the data here. Those probabilities after 100. This is my discrete probability distribution. So I'm just thinking of ages as numbers. I'm not thinking of it as being continuous here. So there are instances where you could treat it as continuous, but I'm not for this argument. So how can we find the mean and standard deviation? Well, you could always try to do these by hand for discrete data. So I'm treating this as discrete data, not continuous data. So if I was going to do that, say you're on the AP exam, you actually are given the formulas on your sheet on the AP exam. So you can see under probability distributions here, if I have a discrete random variable, I'm given the formulas for it. So I can always try to find these by hand. There's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes it's a lot of time and effort and potential for you to make mistakes. So you're going to use calculators to do the math, even though you're going to write what the formula is down. So here's what we're going to do. We are still going to make sure that we write our formulas for how we're going to compute them down, because the AP exam really wants to see that work. So I'm going to write that the expected value of x, or the mean of x here, is going to be the values whose x takes on by their probability. So 16 times 0.02 plus 17 times 0.48 plus 18 times 0.35 and plus 19 times 0.15. So I'm going to write this out. And if you had more ages than this, what you could do a lot of the time, instead of maybe writing this 18 there, you could always write a ... right there to emphasize, hey, continue adding in this way. So you want to make sure you still write down this work here. Similarly, if I'm going to find the standard deviation. But let's find out what this mean is before we do that. So how can we use our calculators to do it? Well, we are going to leverage the lists functions to begin with. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go to my TI-84. I'm going to go to stats and then edit, because I want to make lists. Now, if I have information in the lists already, I'm going to clear them. So I'm going to clear everything in list 2, clear everything in list 1. Only reason I'm clearing these instead of using the other lists is because I just have a preference to use list 1, list 2, a lot of defaults for what. So the ages I had for my students, I'm going to enter in list 1 here. So 16, 17, 18, and 19. Then in list 2, I'm going to enter in these probabilities I had before. So 0.02, 0.48, so 0.02, 0.48. Then what else do I have? 0.35 and 0.15, 0.35, 0.15. So you've entered all your data into list 1, list 2. So list 1 is the numbers my random variable takes on. List 2 is the probability that the random variable will take on those numbers. So now that I have this, you can leave your list function. I like hitting quit here. Now we're going to go to stats. And we're going to scroll to the right to calc. And since mean, standard deviation, all this is one variable stats, we're going to select one variable stats here. So under list, you're going to write the list that you stored the values your random variable will take on. So in my case, List 1 was the values 16, 17, 18, and 19. The values x can take on. So I'm going to keep that there. Well, since I have two things now, list 2 was the probabilities of each one. You're going to treat that as the frequency list. So list 2 will be the probabilities that correspond to each of the values your random variables take on. So I need to put list 2 here. So I'm going to hit second and then 2 because that'll bring this blue L2 button there. And then I'm going to go down and hit calculate. And if you have an older calculator, you won't have this list. You will have a different screen that shows up. It'll bring up one variable stats, and instead of hitting enter, you'll write list 1, comma, list 2, then enter, but then you'll get the same list here. So what it gives me now, it tells me the mean of 17.63. Now, a notational issue is your calculator is going to write X bar. So you need to know that even though it's saying X bar here, because that you're looking at a whole population, this is really a population mean. So our mu sub x in this case is 17.63. So I can now write that this is equal to 17.63. Now, when you're looking for standard deviation, you should always be finding your variance first. So in the grand scheme of things, this is what you would have. Your variance, so sigma sub x squared, is going to be equal to, so you're going to write this work. This is the line you'd write for your variance work. And then your standard deviation is just the square root of your variance. Unfortunately, your calculator won't tell you the variance, but it tells us that the standard deviation is about 0.757. So I'm going to write that standard deviation is about 0.757, and I can just write that the square of that is about 0.573. So 0.757 squared is going to give me approximately a variance of 0.573. Square root that to get back to your standard deviation. So this is how we'd be able to use the TI-84 to be able to get and check our expected values and our standard deviations. But if you're taking the AP Stats exam, you still need to make sure you're writing adequate work for your expected value and standard deviation if you're going to use your calculator and not do it by hand. So make sure you're still including work like I have here. So I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, consider hitting the like button and have an awesome day.